Dota 2 is a perfectly balanced game, is something I would say if I was tied to a chair and had a gun held to my head. Because the reality is, Dota 2 is probably one of the most unbalanced and out of control video games ever made. But just because something is considered overpowered doesn't necessarily mean it's badly designed. For instance, a lot of you guys might hate this hero called Bristleback. And that's rightly so. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves here, this hero belongs in the deepest pits of hell. But as much as we can agree on this much deserved hate, his design is well crafted and pretty straightforward. As he's clearly a porcupine who has a retaliation mechanic when you attack his back, and his playstyle revolves around baiting people to focus him, creating space. A simple yet effective counter to his design is to just try and attack his front side. Sure, this might be easier said than done, and he might be incredibly obnoxious to fight against, but his design ultimately makes sense. Another example I could give is Sniper, who also seems to annoy a lot of players as well. His whole kit revolves around his name, as all he can really do is shoot enemy units from afar. And a simple counterplay to this is to just try and close in the gap by using blinking abilities and items to try and take him out. He is annoying because of his strengths, but at the end of the day, he still has his weaknesses. With good balance comes great design. I would say a large proportion of the Dota 2 cast are pretty well crafted, but there are some heroes in this game that are fundamentally or inherently seen as broken. And I'm not saying broken in a sense of, oh my god, this hero is so OP, please nerf. I mean broken as in basically unplayable. Goes against Dota's basic rules and forces you to go through struggles in hopes of trying to make the hero work, either because of their functionality or ability or lack of thereof. I'm talking about specific heroes who are objectively frustrating to play as or against. Heroes that are poorly designed, rely too heavily on gimmicky tactics, and are just overall bad for the game. Now, this is a video I've been thinking about making for a while now, since bitching about hero designs is my specialty and I just love to complain. So with the help of the community and a lot of asking around for personal opinions, these are the top Dota 2 heroes when it comes to bad design. Tinker is infamously known for one thing and one thing only: being annoying. Even though he's been through so many different versions of himself throughout the years, he still managed to maintain his title of most annoying hero in the entire game. He has been reworked and rebalanced into multiple variations and even fitting himself into different roles and positions, yet every single fucking time, they just managed to make him even more irritating than the last time we saw him. His whole playstyle revolves around hiding in the tree lines and spamming the same ability over and over and over and over and over again until he eventually runs out of mana to then reset back to base, do his little TP shenanigans so that he can repeat the same process over and over and over and over. It's become pretty obvious to everybody that because he's been through so many countless reworks and rebalancing that not even Valve themselves know what to do with this little bastard. The rearm ability just by itself has caused so much chaos and mayhem in the past. It took years to finally get it to a quote-unquote balanced state in the game. Would you believe me if I told you that items like BKB, Necrobook, and Hand of Midas were able to be refreshed? Yeah, it was a complete and utter nightmare. For the longest time, Tinker has always stayed in the mid lane position as a late game scaling mage. Similar to a hero like Storm Spirit, he was able to farm exceptionally fast due to his March of Machines ability, and always had a presence on the map thanks to his rearm ability basically giving him infinite teleportation. This combination of abilities, however, manifested itself into one of the most toxic and mundane playstyles ever imaginable. Every single Tinker game was just a glorified version of hide and seek, where Tinkers would typically just be completely useless, eating up all the farm in the entire map for the first 20 minutes or so. And if you didn't have the correct heroes to find Tinker, like a Zeus or a Spectre, chances are he scaled infinitely into a guaranteed win every single time. So in an attempt to fix this, Valve went ahead and decided to remove his March of the Machines ability entirely in hopes to fixing this toxic playstyle and to make Tinker a more active mid lane hero. This, however, didn't work at all, resulting in one of the worst heroes in Dota 2's history, plummeting his win rate all the way down to 30%, one of the lowest recorded win rates of all time. Tinker, with no way to farm his items, was borderline unplayable. But as of the 7.36 update, Tinker was given back his farming ability and was also given a brand new one: Defense Matrix. And oh boy, do I hate this shit! Thanks to this, he has now moved on to a more supportive role. Kind of. Well, I mean, his playstyle now revolves around spamming the shield ability on his allies, whilst also being able to farm items extremely fast due to his old ability given back to him. So he's essentially just a support hero that can farm a lot. Great, a position one's favorite type of hero. I will stand by this statement till the day I die, but in my opinion, Earthshaker is by far the worst designed hero not only in Dota, but in MOBA history. Where do I even begin? The fact that his entire existence revolves around a singular item, literally relies on the enemy team to have bad positioning, and has less game impact than a fucking Magikarp. And the absolute worst part of it all is, I actually really like this hero, man. Why can't this hero just be good, dude? I think it's safe to say that Earthshaker is a hero that everybody likes to watch and play, but my god, we don't see this hero win very often. He's a very fun hero with a hugely satisfying kit. I mean, is there anything more satisfying than landing a 5-man Echo Slam? But what exactly is stopping him from keeping up with the rest of the cast? Well, let's first talk about his overall design and playstyle. Earthshaker is a very close-ranged melee-oriented hero that, when close, can deal a pretty large chunk of damage and can chain stun multiple enemies for a long period of time. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, when it comes to stunning and locking down multiple enemy heroes, Earthshaker is definitely no slouch and does this job pretty well. But the problem is, this happens only if he is close range. His fissure is the only way of hitting and stunning enemies from afar, and this ability is lackluster to say the very least. It's got a very long startup, stuns for a very short amount of time, and has an extremely long cooldown. Also, if you cast this one too many times in lane, get ready to run your ass all the way back to base, because guess what? You're out of mana. Besides this, he really has no way at all of being able to dish out his damage and stuns without having to take a risk by simply walking on in first, because his entire kit revolves around his passive ability, Aftershock, which has a, the range is pretty rough. To put it simply, he's a hero that requires to be close range, but has no easy way to close in on that range. And because of this lack of mobility, this also means he doesn't have any easy way to escape the bad situations he's forced to put himself through. Just imagine playing a hero like Earth Spirit without his roll, or a Magnus without a skewer. That's exactly what it feels like playing this hero. Blink Dagger just becomes such an annoying requirement and is such a hassle to farm it, especially if you were to play Earthshaker as a support, which he mostly is. So before you can hit that timing, you really are just the absolute worst hero in existence. You have absolutely no lane pressure, no good harassing and poking abilities, and are very, very, very prone to dying. Let's just say there was a good reason why Valve gave him this new innate ability. But even after all this ranting, guess what? I'm just getting started. His ultimate ability.
Echo Slam?
It hurts for me to say this, but the Echo Slam ability does indeed suck, at least compared to the other teamfight abilities we have in this game. The main downside that separates this ability from the rest is that it requires a very specific scenario to receive its full benefit, which is a crowd of enemies, meaning that if you were to use this ability on one single enemy only, this would in fact be a complete waste. Now don't get me wrong, when you use an ability like Chronosphere or Black Hole or Reverse Polarity on one single unit, yeah, it also does feel like absolute shit. But hey, at least you're still technically receiving the full benefit of the ability. It's just on one single enemy instead of 5. However, for Earthshaker, it is not the same thing. Echo Slamming one single person is basically just triggering a single proc of your Aftershock. The Echo Slam literally, and I mean literally, does nothing. Because, well, you know, there's nothing to echo from one another. On top of that, could we also talk about how his ult isn't even the part that stuns? That's right, the stun is technically only coming from his passive whenever he activates an ability, which, by the way, has a smaller AoE range than his ult, meaning that you could land a pretty decent Echo Slam, but some units far away might not even get stunned, even if they're affected by your Echo Slam. Why? And on top of that, yeah, I'm not done yet. Why, for the love of God, why does the ult stun not even pierce debuff immunity? You would think for how niche and rare landing a good Echo Slam really is, you should not be able to just BKB through it. Almost every other teamfight ability is just horrifying because they all pierce through BKB, and only good teamfight positioning is the only way to counter it. Chronosphere pierces, Reverse Polarity pierces, Black Hole pierces. You could say that, oh well, Tide's Ravage doesn't pierce BKB either. Yeah, well, that's a good point, but the last time I checked, Echo Slam doesn't cover up your entire fucking monitor. Well now, this is probably very surprising to all of you. Now don't get me wrong, I love this hero. I like her design, I like her playstyle, I like her two big, massive, voluptuous psionic blades. She's great, and I love almost every single thing about her. But if I'm going to be completely honest for a second here, as much as I do love this hero, I have to admit, she probably has one of the most terrible and inaccurate portrayals of an assassin in any game ever made. Now tell me, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of an assassin? Is it the insane agile mobility of being able to maneuver around at swift speeds, or maybe sneaking around the shadows, striking behind your enemies only when the time is right? If you thought of something along those lines, you and I would both be on the same page. However, according to Dota, to them, it's a ranged damage dealer who has a f***ing shield ability that has to stand still to even become invisible. She may have the word assassin in her name, but she is literally anything but. Every other assassin here in the game is actually a true assassin. Meek's assassin has the ability to run through the entire map at insane speeds, fully invisible, sneaking up to squishy targets and killing them before they can even react. And Phantom Assassin, in my opinion, is the perfect representation of a proper assassin hero. There is nothing more assassin-esque than throwing knives at your opponents from the shadows, being able to blink onto enemies from long distances, and landing massive crits one-shotting them from full HP. This is exactly what I envision when I think of the word assassin. Meanwhile, TA lacks almost all of these different features. She doesn't have any form of mobility at all. She doesn't really use her stealth all too much, since she literally cannot move whilst using her invisibility. And she's a range-based carry hero that, if anything, would rather stay as far away as possible to be able to land side blades off of hitting her enemies. There is literally nothing about this hero that represents being an actual assassin. I guess maybe her face mask counts because, oh, look at the face mask. Ooh, face mask equals assassin, by the way. Now, do I necessarily think that her design is overall bad? No, I think her massive damage output is fairly enjoyable. Her refraction shield allows for quite a risky and greedy playstyle, and landing difficult side blades never gets old. I like TA a lot, but calling her an assassin is just absolutely outrageous because she's just far from it. That's almost like calling Earthshaker a hero. Let's be honest here, he's a glorified creep.